Hi, welcome to Undergraduate English Unsolved. Today we will be looking into the mystery as to why Rupi Kaur is not on the English 2025 syllabus. First, let's start with the facts. Who is Rupi Kaur?
Rupi was born in 1992 in India and moved with her family to Canada at age 4. She had difficulty with speaking English and found it easier to just write. She developed a love for the written word and continued this passion through college. Her fame became more impending though when she started posting her poems through Tumblr and Instagram. Her first book and most famous book, Milk and Honey, was published in 2014. Her book became instantly popular. Her next book, The Sun and Her Flowers, was published in 2017.
Rupi Kaur writes her poetry in unique ways. Often her poetry has a lack of punctuation and capitalization and will often include her own illustrations. Other significant things is that she will most times not include a title, but if one does, it usually is at the bottom in italics. The most famous aspect of her poems, though, is their significant shortness. Her subjects of poetry typically include love, relationships, women abuse, equality, empowerment, and self-love. Another aspect is that each poem is on its own page, while separated into chapters by subject matter. In her first book, the chapters were titled The Hurting, The Loving, The Breaking, and The Healing. Rupi and her poetry spread to the point where she was performing her poetry in concerts.
It cannot be said, though, that her poetry isn't without form and technique that shapes the poem. I will read this poem to you. I don't know what living a balanced life feels like. When I am sad, I don't cry, I pour. When I am happy, I don't smile, I glow. When I am angry, I don't yell, I burn. The good thing about feeling in extremes is when I love, I give them wings. But perhaps that isn't such a good thing because they always tend to leave. And you should see me when my heart is broken. I don't grieve, I shatter. In this poem here, you can see how repetition is used to make a point. This repetition puts an emphasis on what exactly she is saying and causes the poem to stick and echo in the reader's ears. Another technique that is used is how there's a change between the different stanzas, giving the reader moving room and change. This change sets you up so that at the very end it can circle back to the repetition used in the first stanza, but in a certain way. While the previous repetition with I don't cry, I pour, I don't smile, I glow, etc., it has this line break to show the importance of that line. I don't grieve, I shatter. And then that point carries across. This line break allows that pause so that you can take a break and suspend it over what she is saying, making the impact deeper upon the reader.
After the publishing of Milk and Honey, poetry books like this were booming. People began reading this type of poetry across the country. So, one must question why this form of modern poetry is so powerful and popular. The importance of her poetry lays in how she impacted other poets. Poets all around have begun to show their poems in books like these, including the famous Nature poem by Tommy Pico. If you go to the store, you can find books on books with poetry like this. It becomes impertinent to start studying this poetry to see if this changes the definition of poetry. What was once poetry in conjunction with rhythm and meter and verse, now we see short poetry where the emphasis is not laid upon how the poem was formed, but rather the deepness that it has an effect on a reader.
Rupi Kaur and her works are important to begin to discuss in English 2025 because she began a new train of modern poetry that is spread across the nation. This could be the new era of poetry, so we should begin to understand the impact that it could have on people and literature today. In comparison with poetry of the past, we can find the differences and begin discussing how and where this poetry fits. It also can be discussed if these short excerpts can be considered poetry at all. We need to see how this changes modern poetry and poets today and in the future.
As you can see, the importance and impact of Rupi Kaur is significant. From the readers to the poets that write today, you can see how things have changed. Poetry has come to a new era, and it's time that we begin to discover the parameters that it has extended to. The reason as to why Rupi Kaur is not on the syllabus for English 2025 still remains unsolved.